What's going on, guys? It's Amazing Watch here, back with another video, and today we're going to be going over the end of October tier list for Global Grand Cross. So let's get into it. Alright, so for this tier list, guys, I'm actually changing up the format a little bit. I think what I'm going to do from now on, instead of having my old tier list where I had all the units like put together on one tier list, I'm gonna have it so that like this, with all the new units that came out within the month, and then just rank them within the tiers. If you guys want to see my actual tiering for older units, definitely make sure to check out the other videos. For the new units that it came out in the month, we're actually going to be going over them now. Alright, so the first character we're going to be going over is going to be Zaratros. So Zaratros, he's green attribute, SSR rarity. For his passive right here, if a critical strike does not occur from a skill used against an enemy, the hero's damage dealt is increased by the amount equal to the crit chance. So excluding PvP. So basically how it works is, because he has 70% base crit chance, if you don't crit, you're going to get 70% increased damage. So pretty dope. For his first skill, he has shatter damage equal to 300% of attack on all enemies, AoE shatter. And then he has charge single target, so charge damage equal to 500% of attack on one enemy. And then for the ultimate here, we have inflicts charge damage equal to 700% of attack on one enemy as well, and it can scale up to 1050% at 6 out of 6. So for Zaratros on the tier list, Zaratros kind of gets outshined by the next unit that came out within the month, which we'll go over soon. But Green Gowther is obviously a very good unit for Grey Demon Hell. But because Zaratros has a use in Grey Demon Hell, he's actually very good. I'm gonna give him the B tier. You can actually use Zaratros and Hell Grey Demon to do pretty well, but I don't think that he can be anywhere higher than this, because his only use in the game really is Hell Grey Demon. Alright, so for the next characters we're going to be going over, it's going to be Blue Zeldris and Red Zeldris. So let's actually hop into Blue and Red Zeldris. Blue Zeldris is the blue attribute, SSR rarity. For his passive, he's going to increase the hero's crit damage by 30% for each orb removed from the ultimate move gauge. Limit 3 times, excludes depletion from ultimate move use. So he's going to get 30% crit damage every time he loses ultimate, which actually coincides with his commandment. For his commandment of piety, he's going to remove debuffs from allies and enemies that move skills and depletes the ultimate move gauge by 1 orb, excluding deathmatch. So how this is going to work is, what you're going to do with Blue Zeldris is lower your ult gauge by moving a card, and then you're going to get the 30% increased damage, which is pretty dope on the crits. So for his first skill here, he's going to inflict spike damage equal to 400% of attack on one enemy. So single target spike, very good card. For his second card here, he's going to inflict despair damage equal to 250% of attack on all enemies. You basically have like extra lifesteal on your crit right there. So it recovers 15% of diminished HP upon successful critical strike. So that's pretty dope. And then for his ultimate here, he's going to inflict spike damage equal to 560% of attack on one enemy, and this can scale up to 840%. So that is the Blue Zeldris. For the Red Zeldris, he's going to have the same commandment as usual. For his passive, he's going to increase the ally's basic stats by 6% for each ally or enemy with a commandment. So this applies for enemies as well. So if you're facing an opponent Zeldris, your team is going to get an extra 6%. If you're running a full commandments team yourself, you're going to get 24%, which is, you know, very good. For his first skill here, he's going to inflict damage equal to 450% of attack on one enemy and deplete 3 ultimate move gauge orbs. So it's just single target ult depletion. And then for his second skill, he's going to inflict damage equal to 360% of attack on one enemy and disables recovery skills for 2 turns. This is a very good card, man. Disabling recovery skills makes it so they can't cleanse. And then for the ultimate, it's going to be the exact same as the Blue Zeldris, spike 560%. So that's basically going over both the Blue and Red Zeldris. Now let's go over where we should be putting them on the tier list. For the tier list, Blue Zeldris A tier, and I'm going to give Red Zeldris SS tier. And the reason for where I'm putting these units is because Blue Zeldris is kind of unreliable with his crit. As you guys can see, he has 60% chance to crit, but you'd be surprised how many times he won't crit, man, because he really just doesn't crit. Blue Zeldris is memed a ton because he doesn't crit, man. So, you know, when he does crit though, he does a lot of damage. I'm not gonna lie, that is a really good important thing about him. But he's not going to be critting all the time, which is going to kind of be against his entire kit right here. For the Red Zeldris though, because he is so good in what he's able to do with the ult reduction, the recovery disable, I do think that he deserves the SS tier. I don't think he is God tier at the moment. When Droll comes out, possibly, but at the moment, Red Zeldris is just a really good unit. Red Zeldris is just one of those units that's just solid all around, so he's a very good unit. Alright, so for the next units we got are going to be the Halloween Elaine and Halloween Meliodas. So Halloween Meliodas Meliodas, he came out with the Halloween banner. Halloween Meliodas is going to be SSR rarity, he's going to be red attribute. For his passive, he's going to increase the hero's crit chance by 10% at the end of every turn, limit 10 times. Halloween Meliodas already has 30% crit chance, so once you get this stacked up 10 times, you're going to have 130% crit chance, which is pretty solid. It's also going to work into play with his kit. For his first skill here, he's going to inflict damage equal to 375% of attack on one enemy and poisons for 3 turns, which is pretty solid because poison did get buffed on global, so he does have a little bit of damage coming from the additional damage from poison. And then for his second skill here, he's going to inflict spike damage equal to 250% of attack on all enemies. So this is basically just AoE double crit damage, which is pretty good considering that he does increase his crit chance. And then for his ultimate here, he's going to cancel buffs and stances on one enemy and inflict damage equal to 490% of attack, then stuns for 1 turn. This can scale up to 735% at 6 out of 6. For his combined attack link, when he's linked up with Giant DN, he's going to cancel buffs and stances on one enemy and inflict damage equal to 560% of attack, then stuns for 1 turn, and then this can scale up to 840%. Alright, so now moving on to the Halloween Elaine. Elaine, she's probably the better of the two. When we actually go into her kit, she's a blue attribute SSR rarity. For her passive, she's going to increase defense-related stats by 8% at the start of the next turn if the hero takes damage, limit to 5 times. So every time the hero takes damage, you're going to increase defense-related stats by 8%, which is, you know, solid, man, because increasing your defense-related stats is going to help, especially in harder content. For her first skill here, she's going to inflict damage equal to 150% of attack on all enemies and decrease the attack-related stats by 30% for 3 turns. This card's pretty good. I mean, AoE attack-related stat down is a pretty good card. I mean, especially since it lasts 3 turns, that's pretty viable. And then for her second card here, she's going to increase allies attack by 60% for 2 turns at level 3, which is actually an insane buff card. If you guys don't know where this buff card comes from, it's from Green Gowther, which is a really good buff card. And then for her ultimate, she's going to cancel buffs and stances on one enemy and inflict damage equal to 490% of attack, then stuns for 1 turn. This can scale up to 735% of attack at 6 out of 6. Alright, so where I'm going to be putting these units, the thing is with Halloween Meliodas, he's going to be a C tier unit, and the reason for that is because Halloween Meliodas isn't very viable in any metas on global or JP. On JP, he has never had viability, and even on global, he's not going to have any viability. His crit chance passive is kind of useless because you can only stack it 1 time per turn, and it's only 10%, so he's just been outshined by many other units in the game. For Halloween Elaine, I'm actually going to give her the A tier, and the reason for that is because she has a buff card that's exclusive to her and Gowther, which is super rare to have, and because she does have that, she does have viability in Red Demon. Alright, so the next units we're going to be going over is going to be Roxy and Shin, so let's actually go over them. First, we're going to be going over the Gamer Shin. He's going to be SSR rarity, green attribute. For his passive, the hero gains a buff which increases attack related stats by 8% whenever hitting an enemy. When there are 3 or more stacks of this effect, they are removed and increase the ally's skill rank. So this is just like a mini Gowther rank up type of thing for your team, which is pretty dope. For his first skill, he's going to inflict weak point damage equal to 170% of attack on all enemies, and weak point is just triple damage against debuffed enemies. For his second skill here, he's going to inflict damage equal to 150% of attack on all enemies and decrease ultimate move damage by 50% for 2 turns. And then for his ultimate, he's going to inflict shattered damage equal to 420% of attack on all enemies, and this can scale up to 630% at 6 out of 6. Now for Roxy, Roxy is a pretty decent character as well. I don't think she's as good as Shin, but she is a pretty decent character in her kit. So she's going to be SSR rarity, red attribute. For passive, she's going to be inflicting explosion damage on an enemy, heals the hero's HP by 30% of the max HP, and fills the ultimate move gauge by 1 orb. For her first skill here, she's going to inflict damage equal to 200% of attack on all enemies and explode after 1 turn, which is actually going to coincide pretty well with her passive. And then for her second skill here on a level 3, she's going to cancel buffs and stances on one enemy and inflict damage equal to 400% of attack. For her ultimate, she's going to inflict damage equal to 700% of attack on one enemy and fills the ultimate move gauge by 2 orbs. This ultimate can scale up to 1050% at 6 out of 6, which is actually a solid multiplier for where it's at. Alright, so now going over them in the tier list where I think they would be ranking. So Shin, I'm going to give Shin A tier, and the reason for giving Shin A tier is because he has a pretty synergistic kit where he has weak point and he has a debuffing AoE card, so he's actually very good for farming because of his rank up and because he's able to have weak point AoE, which is going to help a lot for damage wise. For Roxy here, I'm going to give her the B tier because she does have some viability in PvP, which I've seen her work actually pretty well. And shout out to Devo. Devo actually uses Roxy really well in his comps, so I do think that Roxy is a very good character when used on the correct team. But other than that, she only has a niche use being on specific teams. Alright, so now that we're done with all the units that have come out in the month, we have the last batch of units, which are going to be the KOF units and then Halloween Gowther. So I think we're going to go over the KOF units first, and then we'll go over Halloween Gowther. So let's hop into each of the KOF units. Let's do them individually instead of as a bunch because of all the units we have here. So let's actually start off with Omega Rugal. So Omega Rugal is going to be SSR Rarity, Green Attribute. For his passive, he's going to remove the hero's debuffs, fully heal their HP, and increases all stats by 15% when the hero survives with 50% HP or less, limit to 1 time. For his first skill here, he's going to inflict pierce damage equal to 250% of attack on all enemies. This is the same card as Blue Demon Melee, so if you guys have seen that, it's pretty insane, man. Triple pierce. For his second skill here, he's going to inflict damage equal to 300% of attack on one enemy and decreases attack related stats by 40% for 2 turns. For his ultimate, he's going to inflict charge damage equal to 700% of attack on one enemy, and this can scale up to 1050% at 6 out of 6. Alright, so for Omega Rugal on the rankings, I'm actually going to give Omega Rugal the SS tier, and the reason for giving Omega Rugal SS tier is because of his synergistic kit. He's actually really good on the pen team, as you guys can see from having 55% base pierce rate, which is super insane knowing that he has this pierce card. Just for reference, Demon Melee only has 40% pierce rate while Rugal has 55% pierce, so he's gonna be really good on the pierce team. Another thing to note is his passive is insane, man. He gets full heal, he gets increased all stats, so all of these stats right here get increased, obviously except the combat class. Everything else here gets increased by 15%, so Rugal just becomes insanely powerful when he's on the pierce team and he's getting below that threshold, so he can just get the 15% and full heal. So I do think that he's deserving of the SS tier. The next unit we're going to be going over is going to be Kyo. So Kyo Kusanagi, he's going to be the SSR Rarity and Red Attribute. For his passive, at the beginning of every turn, 2 ignites are applied on all enemies for 3 turns, reducing damage dealt to allies by 5% for each ignite effect on the enemy, excluding deathmatch, and applies when entering battle. For his first skill here, he's going to inflict code destruction damage equal to 425% of attack on one enemy, and if you guys don't know what code destruction does, it's 20% increased damage per debuff on the target. For the second skill here, he's going to inflict blaze damage equal to 250% of attack on all enemies, and blaze is 25% increased damage per ignite effect on the target. For Kyo's ultimate, he's going to inflict damage equal to 490% of attack on one enemy and applies 2 ignite effects for 3 turns on all enemies. This can scale up to 725% of attack at 6 out of 6. Alright, so where would I be ranking Kyo Kusanagi? I think I'm going to give Kyo the SS tier as well. I do think that Kyo's passive is very powerful when used correctly. If you go first in PvP and you have Kyo's passive up, the enemy is already going to have 8 ignites on in 4v4, which is insane. That's 8 times what, the 5% from each ignite stack for defense. So Kyo is going to be getting because he gets 5% damage reduction per ignite, and if there's 8 ignites on the targets, you're going to be getting like 40% damage reduction on the first turn. So Kyo, he's going to be super insane, man. In PvP right now, he's definitely top of the meta, especially him and Rugal. These two are just very good units. The next unit we're going to be going over is going to be Athena. So Athena here is going to be the SSR Rarity and Green Attribute. For her passive, she's going to delete 2 orbs from the ultimate move gauge of all enemies at the end of the turn when an ally hero defeats an enemy during an allied turn in PvP. For her first skill here, she's going to cancel stances on one enemy and inflict damage equal to 500% of attack, then stuns for 1 turn. This is the same card as Blue Arthur, so if you guys have used him, you'll know what this card does. For her second skill, she's going to inflict detonate damage equal to 400% of attack. Detonate increases damage by 20% per ultimate move gauge orb. For her ultimate, she's going to cancel stances on one enemy and inflict damage equal to 700% of attack. This can scale up to 1050% at 6 out of 6. Alright, so for Athena, I'm gonna give Athena the B tier, and the reason for giving Athena the B tier is because she doesn't really have much viability in PvP, because her passive is centered around being a PvP passive, where you deplete the ultimate move gauge. There are many other units that can be used in the sub slot and be better for that same type of role, So I do think that Athena is a little bit worse than every other KOF unit, but she does have a pretty solid spot on specific teams. Alright, so now we're going to be going over Mai. So SSR rarity, she's going to be blue attribute. So for Mai's passive, she's going to increase the hero's basic stats by 15% for 2 turns if their skill ranks up. For her first skill here, she's going to inflict damage equal to 450% of attack on one enemy and depletes 3 ultimate move gauge orbs, which is actually the same card as Green Merlin. For her second card here, she's going to inflict amplified damage equal to 250% of attack on all enemies, and amplify increases the damage dealt by 30% per active buff on self. For her ultimate, she's going to inflict damage equal to 630% of attack on one enemy and increases the skill ranks of all the hero's skills. This can scale up to 945% of attack at 6 out of 6. So for Mai, I do think Mai is better than Athena, so I'm going to give her the A tier, but I do think she is a little worse than Kyo and Rugal, and the reason for that is because she doesn't really have a viable team comp right now in PvP. Her kit is actually very good because she increases the hero's basic stats every time she ranks up, and this actually applies when merging a card. So if you merge your Amplify card into a level 2 or a level 3, then you're actually going to get the basic stats buff, and this is going to work with Amplify, which is really powerful. So I do think that Mai is deserving of the A tier. Alright, so for the final unit we're going to be going over is going to be Green Gowther. So he's going to be SSR rarity and green attribute. For his passive, he's going to increase allies' attack-related stats by 7% at the start of every turn if allies in battle are all from different races. Limit to 5 times, applies when entering battle, resets when 2 of the same race appear. For his first skill here, he's going to inflict damage equal to 180% of attack on all enemies and depletes 2 ultimate move gauge orbs at the end of the enemy's turn for 2 turns. For his second skill here, he's going to be increasing the skill ranks of all allies and increases basic stats by 20% for 3 turns. This is a very powerful card, being a rank up card just like the Red Gowther. For his ultimate, he's going to inflict damage equal to 350% of attack on all enemies and deplete 3 ultimate move gauge orbs, and this can scale up to 525% at 6 out of 6. When linked up with a Skinny King, this actually inflicts 400% of attack on all enemies and depletes 5 ultimate move gauge orbs, and this can scale up to 600% at 6 out of 6. So for Green Gowther on the tier list, I do think that Green Gowther is deserving of the God tier, and the reason for that is because Green Gowther's viability in PvP is actually like really insane. Not even just for PvP, but also in PvE scenarios because of his passive and how it works. If you just bring a set team and it has all the different races on it, Gowther's going to be stacking 7% attack related stats, which is honestly better than the Red Gowther's passive. But the only thing is that you're hindered into using specific units for your team because of the different races. But I do think that just because of that, it doesn't really make it any worse because you can actually work around that. And another thing to know is that this Gowther has rank ups as well, so he's going to carry in Grey Demon Hell. He's going to be ranking up your team. He's going to be depleting ult gauge. Honestly, I just think that this Gowther is on the level of God tier with the rest of the units I had from the last tier list on God tier. So that's going to be the tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe as always, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.